it's now time to talk about some key approaches of CDA. I'll briefly talk about some important approaches, though at the moment we have so many approaches which has emerged in CDA in last decade, especially because it has been a very popular subject recently in language and social studies. But I'll talk about some of the primary approaches and which were initiated in the beginning. And based on these approaches, there are so many other approaches which have been molded or emerged recently. I'll start with a sociocultural approach, which was proposed by Fairclough, who is obviously one of the most dominant names in the contemporary critical discourse studies. His sociocultural approach is based on the belief that our discourse is not just a combination of words, rather it's a lot more than that. And a good investigator into discourse studies should need to look into discourse from more than one perspective. For example, he need to look into discourse as a text is a combination of words or linguistic items, including symbols, signs, facial expressions, gestures, etc., including both word text as well as the text which may be comprised on some multimodal elements. It also includes the view of discourse as a discourse practice, because whatever we say, whatever we do, comprises or is based on a certain norm of saying or writing it in a certain society, or in a certain social way or academic way, or in other words in a certain genre. So whenever we say something or do something, we remain limited in a certain genre. As I can give you example, as I'm talking right now, and I'm trying to speak more formal language because I'm trying to deliver a lecture. So maybe in my social settings with my friends, I would be using a different language. So the genre in which we are speaking is also a view which carries a lot of meanings. So we need to see the text or discourse as a discourse practice also. Then the more important aspect of discourse, which is critical or central to critical discourse analysis, is discourse as a social practice. So how we build a discourse in a certain socio-cultural reality also bears a lot of meaning, as the same words can be used to build a message for peace or a message for confrontation. So how we build it in a certain socio-cultural reality would bear a lot of interaction with the text and would have a strong bearing on the meaning. Based on such views, Fairclough also proposed a three-dimensional model, which was based on description, interpretation, and explanation. This model can help us to analyze various texts based on critical discourse analysis. At first stage, we usually look into description, in which we look for various components, linguistic items, or main topics of a text. That is called description of a discourse or text. In interpretation, we look into the relationship between the discursive process and the text, how a text has been built up in a certain academic or social norm as far as the text construction is concerned. Then the explanation of the relationship between the text or discourse and the social reality we live in. That, as I said earlier, is considered to be the most important component of any critical discourse analysis, when we link it with the realities in which a certain text is produced. Next important approach is sociocognitive approach, which comes to us through Von Dijk. Von Dijk is a key component of this approach, and he focuses on social cognition as the mediating part between text and society. He believes that that cognition plays an important role in the process of the production of a text in a certain society. He claims that CDA needs to account for the various forms of social cognitions that are shared by the social collective organizations or other groups of human beings, because we usually work within their sphere, and the text produced by us usually reflect our identities. So it is important to look into the cognitions through which a text is produced. He identifies two levels of analysis, macro and micro. Macro usually deals with the superstructure of a society, for example, how power and identity or ideology are related to a certain level, whereas micro deals with various ways of interaction and communication in a certain society, which are largely linguistic in nature. The next one is discourse historical approach. This approach comes to us through Ruth Woodick. His various projects actually comprise this approach, and this is in some ways similar to other approaches, but it has led us to think about discourse and its production from different aspects also. This approach leads us to think about the production of discourse from a historical perspective, how a certain kind of discourse has been produced in a certain society, and what kind of development have emerged during this process, and how those development have been influencing the overall construction of the meaning of a certain text, or building up the ideology or identities of the community who is producing that particular kind of text or discourse. So this discourse historical approach, in short, deals with the production or dissemination of a discourse from a historical perspective.